So our targeting matters when it comes to sales. That's another thing that people don't realize. You got to make sure you're selling the right product to the right person, putting that product in front of the right person's eyes for you to get the sales.
And I think that you have to be aware of that, because so say I don't know who Bad Bunny is, but I like the socks.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm Michele.
Karamel, listen.
Welcome in. Ooh, what's going on?
So you know what's so funny about when people don't realize what business ownership looks like? They forget that business ownership means sales, whatever sales it is. And it's beyond me.
You know, people think sales is a dirty word. You know, they a lot of people think that it's a dirty word, and they don't like to say sales. Oh no, I don't sell. I'm not a salesman. I'm not salesy.
What makes somebody think that that's not the full nature of what business actually is? You are selling. You are giving a product or a service or it's beyond me that no one wants to talk about their
Because
sales.
all I do is just say, hey, I have these products, and then the people just buy them. I'm not selling it to them. I don't make them buy it. See, people think sales means you're making somebody do something.
Well, you know, what's so interesting to me is, you know, I teach a lot of women who want to go into small business, into the travel space in business. And I teach them that you are selling a product, and that product has to be top notch for someone to invest their money in buying it from you. So the idea that you would treat it as a side hustle is beyond me. Nothing hurts me more than someone talking about having a side hustle, because
Well, that doesn't bother me, somebody talking about a side hustle, because I understand, you know, when I had a 9 to 5, I had side hustles because I needed some extra money. And so I needed something to make ends meet. And so I had it.
but here's
What I
the
don't like
question.
is when you
You
say
went
you're talking about side hustle and you call it your business. That's what I don't like.
Well, so I think the two way they could become synonymous, right? Side hustle means I have my own business, whereas if you have your business, your side hustle would be your 9 to 5. This is what I teach them. Like the idea that you're going to your 9 to 5 every day, giving them 110%, but then you come home and you give your side hustle, your business, you give them, you know, 10%, 50%, because I'm just so tired. Boy, that job had me whooped. Well, then you really didn't want to be in business. That's my estimation.
And I agree, because I think if you look at a side hustle as a way to get some extra cash, then that's fine. So then the effort you put into it goes along with getting the extra cash.
100%.
Say it's a business that you're trying to do so you can leave your ball and chain, as you like to say,
That's
then
right.
hey, listen, you got to put energy in it. Like y'all love to say, I'm on them folk job. When I'm on them folk job, that's when I'm on them folk job.
But here's the other part of that. Even if you want to be in business, you still are going to have to find a way to disrupt the market in some way that somebody would find value in whatever it is that you're selling. So the idea that, you know, this travel business, you're going to show all these beautiful pictures and everybody's going to see how great it is, but you don't have a product for them to buy, and you don't invite them to go with you or tell them that you have something for sale. What are we talking about? And
Well,
so
you have to ask for it. You know, a lot of people don't understand, you know, there is a sales cycle. There is a way to do sales. You know, you have to ask for the sale at some point, whether you put it on the screen, hey, these are $15.99, or whether you say the words, you're asking for the sale. Even when you're advertising, that's asking for the sale. And then you have to close the business. You have to give them a way to purchase. And if you don't do that, then guess what?
well, here's the deal. I also think that we should be worried about our numbers 100% and get after a goal. I've got some folks who say they're in business and their goal, I sell candles. I go to the store. I don't have a goal, a sales goal to say how much money I actually want to make. I've got these candles. I got this.
They say evasive things like, I want to make all the money. Okay, what you want to make? All the money in the world, all the money in your state, all the money in your city, all the money in your house. Like what all what money?
It was so interesting. Last night I was talking to McCoy. That's my husband. And we were talking, and I said, man, we just put out a new product. It's an on-demand product, a self-paced where they can buy it. And I said, it's, heavily discounted, like 60% for them to go ahead and get a way of entry into my program. And I said, I only need to sell 31 of them. And he busts out laughing at me and was like, you only need to sell 31? That's classic for you. Like 31 sales, you acting like that ain't nothing. No, I'm acting like that's what I need to sell in order to make my bills every month. It's like I'm saying out loud that in order for me to pay all my bills, if I were to go to this model and sell this one thing, then I would have to sell 31. Now, I don't have to sell 31 right now, but I can mix it with the other product I have and we can kind of have a mix up. But there is a goal, there is a structure in my mind. I have set my mind up for understanding what sales would be required for me to be okay every month. And not enough people do that.
I think people find it hard because it's like, well, I don't know how many I'm going to sell. I just got started. So what do I do? So that's when I go into talking about you have to know your numbers. That's when you have to sit down and you have to figure out how much activity is it going to take to get to the number that you need. And then if you sell one, and the easiest way to figure out how many you need is how much money you need. How much?
That's right. That's the number, Michelle. So when I said to him, I have to have 31 sales, his mind automatically reverts to, so you just gonna say that? Absolutely. What else would I? Why would I not say that?
Because if you don't, I tell people like this. I believe in that. You have whatever you set your goal to. That's what you can get to. And so I look at football teams. A lot of teams say, "Hey, we want a 10-win season." Okay, well, that means that's nothing about a national championship. That's nothing about making it to playoffs. That's 10 wins. So once you get to 10 wins, you feel accomplished. Okay. The strategy, because I'm a big Alabama fan, roll tide, don't say nothing. Anyway, roll tide. So the biggest thing with Alabama, our goal is always national championships. And people are like, you can't win a national championship every year, but I can make that my goal and then see where I land. Some years we win a national championship. Some years we make it to the playoffs. You see what I'm saying? Because our goal is so lofty where we land among the stars. So when people make goals and you don't know how to make a goal, sometimes you can make it too high to where you can't get there.
So that's the other part. So this is what's so crazy. I've got my students who will say, yes, I want to be in travel business. I want this to happen. And I say, what's their number? Like, what do they have to make in order to make it? And they'll say some ridiculous number like $250,000 a year. And they're not making but $60,000 a year on their job. So I'm trying to understand the disconnect because that's a great
$190,000. All of a sudden you need $190,000 to do what? Not saying you don't want to make that type of money, but off the rip to do what?
Well, that could be the goal, but you need to know the realistic number as you're moving and progressing.
And how much time and energy are you willing to put in to get? So to make $250,000, look at people that make that type of money and what type of energy and time they put in to make that type of money. A lot of people think that when you make a lot of money, you don't do a lot of work. That's not true. Because either you do a lot of work or you have a lot of responsibility. Correct. Meaning that if it all goes down, you the one lose your job.
But here's the deal. When I tell them that the number does not have to reflect this ridiculous number that they're talking about in the beginning, get to the small wins, right? So I say, think of it this way. If you're wanting to be in travel business and you were found a way for your travel to be included and you can get a little extra money off of the group trips that you put together, if you can have that happen, how much money would you need then? Would that be able to replace your job? And 250, yeah, you can get there, but that's going to be about 25 trips a year. You ready for that? And then they're like, oh, wait a minute, which is why you have got to know your number. You've got to spit back and say, if I had to lose everything and this is what it looked like, this is what my insurance will cost, this is what it costs. Because, in my world, in travel, there are a lot of women who invest their time and energy in my offerings because they're thinking about expatting with all that's going on in the world right now. And an expat is someone who leaves the country and goes and spends their most of their days in the year in another country, a foreign country. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with staying here, but you got to know your number. You got to know it.
And so let's talk through that, because a lot of times, people say you give big ideas. Let's talk through your number.
Yep.
What your number consists of. Let's sit down, let's write down all your expenses,
Mm-hmm.
everything you have to pay for, everything you spend money on to do your business, everything
Mm-hmm.
the place you do it at,
The
the
insurance, the ingredients, the whatever
every
the products. Mm-hmm.
every single thing, write it down. Okay, those are all of your expenses. Then what profit do you want on top of that?
Mm-hmm.
Because we are learning now that you have to include profit from the very beginning. Because a lot of people, I just want to break even. No, we won't make some profit, because
Mm-hmm.
breaking even is why you never take it seriously, because
Mm-hmm.
all you're doing is breaking even. If the cake costs $15 to make and then you sell it for $15,
You
you ain't.
just wasted a whole lot of time and energy selling something that
Exactly.
didn't
So
right.
now
Mm-hmm.
what's the profit? So every cake I make that costs me $15, I want to double my profit. I want to sell it for $30. I want to make $15 off of every cake. Okay. So now that $15, so your expenses are $1,000. So now make round numbers 20. So that's okay. I got to do 50 cakes, 500 cakes, whatever, you got
And
to
then
do.
you have to decide 50 cakes. Wait a minute, where am I going to find a way
Or
to make
but
50
even in
cakes?
your mind, okay, so that's 50 cakes a month. Okay, where do I normally get my cake sales from? Oh, I get word of mouth. Okay, is word of mouth producing? Look at what you normally do. You normally do 10, 15 cakes a month. Okay, every month you go back since January, you done did 10 to 15 cakes. Okay, well, that's your baseline, 10 to 15 cakes. 10 to 15 cakes times the 30, that's going to give you an amount. Say 10, that's $300. Okay, now we know $300, but I need 1,000 to meet my expenses.
Mhm,
Okay,
mhm.
so let's double that, triple that. How do I get that? How do I get that on up? 4 times that. So now I got to do 60 cakes. How do I find 60 people to buy cakes from me? So do I do word of mouth? Do I do discounts? Do I do buy one? What do I do?
Whatever it takes in order for you to, but the number is important. And here's the other thing. Talk about your numbers like you talk about your children. Look,
You say talk about like I talk about my children. What?
talk about, because when you talk about your numbers like you talk about your children, you start to fall in love with the idea that you can make this thing shake. When I can talk about my sales and say to my husband, yeah, I need just about 31 sales, and I can say that with my chest, I'm telling him that I believe that I can make this happen. I'm going to make it happen whatever way that looks like. So here's what I'll say. Activity is key. You said this earlier. I spend a lot of waking hours. I mean, a lot of waking hours trying to figure out the next way I can get people to give me some of their hard-earned cash for the products that I provide for them that I know will change the trajectory of their life. I know it will. I know what I teach them is that good. That's how I feel about my product. If you don't feel that way about your product, the business that you're running, that may not be the right business for you, because you are in your mind have put a barrier in place that won't allow you to progress and move forward. You got to want it and say it with your chest. Not enough people are using their numbers to say that. They're not using that. Okay, if it takes 30
Well, a lot of times when you talk about sales, people's eyes glaze over. What? What you talking about? She always talking about. So then that means you're not having the right conversation. You don't have the right people in your circle.
That's
You need to
right.
be talking to people who talk business talk. Because see, when you telling your mama, your best friend, your cousin, and all those people, they don't care. They're doing a 9 to 5 and they're not trying to get after something. They might go with you for a minute, but they're not going to talk every day, all day with you about
I
your
tell the
numbers.
people all the time, your family and friends will not only they will not sustain your business, but they also will not be supportive in the way that you want them to show up, because they don't understand it. A 9 to 5 is not the same as saying that you want to be in business. And there's a glorified name around it, but no matter what we're talking about, it all matters. It's all about the sales. So give you an example. I just put out the new product. It's like I said, 60% less. We got 5 sales last night. It's a beta. I got 5 sales last night on a call that was free 99 for me. I already paid for the customer, and I think for me, when I'm saying that, I'm saying, okay, that means that somebody said this is valuable enough that I'll give you some money for it. So now all I have to do now is find the right people to be in that right pocket to buy that product. Different, right? When we talk about somebody who looks at something basic, like, a pair of socks. Well, if it's a pair of socks with, I don't know, Bad Bunny or Dua Lipa on it, would you buy those socks, Michelle?
I don't know who those people are.
Exactly. But if there was a pair of socks that had, I don't know, Genuine on it, you might go ahead and buy those socks. Is that correct?
Yes, and yes.
Our targeting matters when it comes to sales. That's another thing that people don't realize. You got to make sure you're selling the right product to the right person, putting that product in front of the right person's eyes for you to get the sales.
And I think that you have to be aware of that, because so say I don't know who Bad Bunny is, but I like the socks. I'm saying, like, I see the socks and there's some compression socks, and I'm like, you know what? Or there's some socks that I need. It's all about putting it in front of the right person and then the right product. Is your product something people need? So that's a whole nother thing. But
Ooh,
when we're talking
go ahead.
when we're talking about sales, it is important that you understand that, do you need volume or do you need quantity, quality? What is your sales? Because see, your stuff $10. A lot of people can buy $10. Okay,
That's right.
if your stuff $10,000, okay. I give you an example. I was at an event and there was this guy. He sells Porsches.
Mhm.
And so he was like, he's talking to the audience and he was like, yeah, if you need anything, I can help you with exotic cars. And he's like, Michelle, listen, no, sir, I'm not your customer. I drive a Nissan Murano. My step up will be a Mercedes. See, I stepped there. Not a Porsche. Taking me too fast, brother.
But here's the thing. You have identified that you know where your limit is. So there was no conversation there because you're not ready for a Porsche. Even if you ever would be ready, maybe you were not in the market for a Porsche. So again,
but you know who is in the market for a Porsche? I just thought about it.
Who?
Your brother. My husband has said he wants a Porsche. He dropped some breadcrumbs. So now that I think about it, hey, the guy has laid some seeds if I get ready. But do you see that? Because when he asked me, I wasn't thinking about it. But just in this conversation, I realized, hey, I do know somebody who kind of sort of wants.
And so that's the part of the psychology of saying and asking for the sale, knowing that I don't care what you're selling. It could be some lip balm. You are selling something in order to somebody's got to give you some money to be in
Sales
business.
is not a dirty word. Always to think of it like this: the definition, exchange of a commodity for money.
Mm-hmm.
Change of your service could be the commodity, a physical thing could be the commodity, intellectual, whatever it is, it's an exchange for some money. That's a sale.
I tell all of my students that instead of them thinking about it as if they're doing something like a trip, meaning something that's intangible, right? It's something that they're going to go do. I say, treat your trip that you're planning as a product. It's how I productize every trip that I did for my business. It was the way that I stayed structured and understood what the sales and what my revenue versus expenses were, what my profit margin was. I knew that because every product had a price on it. I knew if I pulled Paris chip off the rack, it was going to cost me $23,000. I had to raise $23,000 and charge more for it in order for me to get profit off of that said trip. Now, I also had some trips that weren't they were less expensive and I wasn't making a bunch of money, but there was a strategy there. It was all around the sales. When you get in business and you recognize that your product is a hit, you continue to sell it to the people until you're like, all right, now we can go ahead and grow this thing. That's what scale looks like at the time that you know that the product says we can make it. Do you know what I mean?
Just stop thinking sales is a bad word. I think that's the first mind shift. Mind shift is that sales is not a bad word. I'm in this business. If I'm making cakes, back to our cake analogy, if I'm making cakes and I need to sell 60 cakes a month, okay? How many weeks? Look at the weeks in that particular month. So 4 in the 6. Okay. So now I got to do 15 for this month, 15 a week for this month. Okay. 15 a week. There are 5 days. Say you're only going to do, that's 3 a day. I need to be doing, how do I get to these?
Now that's the first thing you're saying is you got to know how much product that you need. And then now the sales come in. You got to get out there and you got to slay them.
And where do I go for my cakes? Who's interested? What's your ideal client for a cake? Because I'm gonna be honest, I don't eat a lot of cake anymore. Like maybe for a birthday, I'll have a cake. Just going to get some slice of cake. So how do you make me want a cake? Then you start creating ideas go to businesses and say, hey, do y'all celebrate office birthdays? I can provide the cake for you. If you let me know how many birthdays, I can bring a cake every month and y'all can have. Boom, that's one place. You see what I'm saying? Little things that you can do that say, hey, if you sign up, you can find a market for you.
I'll tell you what I will know as well, Michelle. once you have all those cakes sitting in front of you, your mind tells you, I got to get rid of these cakes. Who can I get rid of these cakes with? And that is the idea of understanding the number. You
Do
know
I
that
go by the slice?
yeah.
Like, we can't sell a whole cake anymore. Some people do slices. Find a restaurant that has business. Say, hey, I like to sit my cakes in here. I'll split the profit with you. Blah, 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 blah. I'll make them. You sell them. Blah, blah, blah. How can we do this? You said
Mhm.
you can find ways to make it. Now, we're using the cake sale as the analogy, but it works in every level.
Everything.
If you
Everything.
got a gym, you got to sell memberships. If whatever you're doing, there is some component of sales to it. You're a research. You say, I'm a researcher. I do research. Guess what? At some point, you're gonna have to get some money to do the research. That's you got to sell somebody to support
What's
your
so
research.
is right now that new offer. I went ahead and put that offer together last week because last week there was a down sales week for me. I had no sales the entire week. I had a time to pitch and tell them, hey, this is what I'm selling, and nobody bought nothing. I said, oh, the hell you say? I gotta figure this out. So this week I turned it back on again, and now I've given myself 4 opportunities this week to make sales so I can get after my number. But I have to know that in order for me to get after the number, I gotta know the number. So that's
And,
what
and, and I want to pull the curtain back a little bit because my best friend is all pro sales now. But in the past, in her past life, she was not. She was kind of just like, oh well, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking? Like, I don't what
I think
I,
what it was in the very beginning, I was selling trips, but I was selling trips. That's what I was doing. It didn't feel like there was any strategy and structure. And what you told me was the activity when I wanted to grow and scale. That's what we were talking about. And
And so but even in the beginning, like making money and pricing it in was just kind of like, you were just like the idea of
figuring it
doing.
out.
Hmm?
When I think about it now, what I was doing when I first started, it was research and I was figuring it out. And it was able to pay itself. It was paying itself. And my mind told me in the beginning, as long as you can pay for it, as long as it can pay for itself, you're doing well and you'll figure this thing out. In the beginning, the prices weren't very much. Well, why? Because it wasn't a very valuable product yet. It wasn't until I started putting in all the effort and all the extras that I could start raising the prices
But and that's the point I want to bring to people. When you first start out, a lot of times you don't think about profit. You think about, hey, if I can just break even, I'll be happy because I'm so excited about doing the thing I want to
Mhm,
do.
mhm.
And so that's another show we'll get into about putting profit first and we'll actually bring a guest on for that because I'm going to tell you, it is a whole different mindset. It is
When you
like,
start talking about profit first, I tell the ladies what that is because of what I went through, Michelle, in those early years. I set them up for success in the beginning of their business, saying that they're going to be profitable on their first trip. Because I know what it looks like to not be profitable and to kind of suffer through and just make a way instead of making a way that I can get after that extra money. And so they don't start off not making profit from the very beginning. And I'm proud of that because learn from the best.
and it exactly. And when you know better, you do better. And
Right.
I think that's something that people have got to do the research. Like when you're getting ready to start a business, because everybody will tell you, girl, you need to have your own business. You need to go into business. You need to start doing this as a business.
Mhm.
Yeah, but then when it's time to do business, you're going to have to research it. There's a reason people have a master's degree in business, an MBA. Not saying you have to have one, but
You do
knowing
need to
something.
make sure your market fit. You do need to make sure that you have an ideal client. You do need to make sure you've researched to see that somebody wants this widget, whatever it is.
And a business plan does not hurt. A business plan is not a bad word. And it's like, well, the bank don't do it for the bank. Do it for yourself so that you
Mhm.
understand, you identify who's your client, who's your market, how much is it going to cost you. So when you got to do the sales, you know why you have to do the sales, and
Period.
you can say it with your chest. A lot of times, the insurance that I sell is not the cheapest insurance in the market.
Mhm, mhm,
And so we like to say it ain't for everybody. Okay.
mhm,
We have to find now for the people it's for, oh, it's gold. They like, oh
mhm,
my goodness,
mhm.
this is wonderful. All the benefits, all the perks. But the people it's not for. Y'all stuff too. Well, this baby, this not for
It's
you.
not for you.
It's
And
not.
be okay when it's not for somebody, because I
And
tell
don't let people change your strategy. When
listen,
people, just because I'm not for you, okay, Karamel, you need to start letting men travel on your trips. You
no,
need to do couples.
you do couples, you do men. I do with this is what I do. I don't, and the other part of that, I'm gonna show you made something so very clear. You have got to get out of your way and not being ashamed of the value that you're bringing to the marketplace. You
Be
got to
able to
get out of
tell, like you making those back to our cake scenario. If you using real butter and sugar and whatever chocolate is good chocolate and stuff, that stuff
You need to
called
say
real
it.
coconut and all that kind of stuff, but not imitation vanilla, real vanilla. That stuff costs money, and you have to say that in your ingredients that
Mhm,
we use 100% real natural ingredients, and that's what costs more money. Then now I'm paying for value. I'm not
mhm.
doing a box cake over here. We doing
Yep.
homemade
We
cakes
do
over
a
here.
homemade case. So ultimately, what I'll tell you is, if you are in business and you're wanting to sell whatever product, service, whatever that looks like, know your number. What is your number that will help you? And what sales do you need for this to be a viable business? Once you know that, we work backwards to figure out what activity, the level of activity that you have to be in. We figure out how much money you're going to have to spend in order to make that happen, because you're always going to have to spend money to go ahead and make money. If you know that, you'll be golden. And that's that to me. More, not enough people are talking about money and not talking about their sales and talking about what their investment is and what it looks like to be successful in their business. And I think if they started having those conversations, you would get to, do I want to do this a lot faster than just,
Exactly.
yeah.
I love it. Best friend, you said that, girl. You said that. Great show.
Yeah, I love you.
I love you.